Yeah, so how you going? I'm back. So yeah, like about 30 minutes later, I tried putting my domain into my browser and got a directory listing rather than a redirect back to the host that has parked the domain. So that means that the DNS is propagated throughout the entire uh, throughout the entire internet, and now it's pointing back to my own servers. So because now I've got a directory listing, the next step would be to then go and put all the WordPress files in that directory. So all you do is you go to the WordPress website, wordpress.org/download. Download the latest version. The latest version at the time of this recording is 3.4. It's tiny little files, 3.8 meg. It's downloaded as a .zip if you're using Windows. And then what you all do is basically grab your downloads, and we open that up, and then I'm going to extract it to a directory somewhere and keep a folder. So we'll just put all that out. Then what you should do is when you've got the WordPress files on your computer, you need a FTP client, and I'm going to go ahead and assume that you know what FTP basically is. It stands for File Transfer Protocol. It's literally, file transferring between a local computer and a remote server. So what we do is we download like an FTP client, which allows us to connect to our server, and the credentials, the username and password, will be provided to you by your host. So what we do is we connect up to our server. So I'll just do that now using FileZilla. I've already put in my credentials here. I connect to the server, and it'll go away and connect to my server. Right, so once we connect to our server using our username and passwords, so you just need to navigate to your directory. So I would go ahead and assume that 9 times out of 10, if you've only got this single domain against the host, that you basically want to dump the files. I'm using a Linux host. That's the only host you can use for WordPress, because WordPress uses MySQL database and is written in the language PHP. And so uh, they talk to an Apache, what's called an Apache web server, which sits on a Linux or Linux um, server. So a web directory for Linux or Apache boxes is public HTML. That's where the files for the website sit. And if you're running add-on domains, then it's going to show additional domains. So if I just look at, say, my top level directory here, you can see that I've got like a bunch of different domains all around this. So anyway, here's my WordPress.com add-on domain. I'll go to that, and then basically on the local computer, I just browse to where I put my WordPress download folder, and I can't remember where I put it, of course. Uh, right, so then here's my Right, so I find my WordPress folder that I created. I go into the WordPress folder, and basically all you need to do is copy all of that and upload it. So that'll take, probably like, I don't know, something around 10 minutes. Don't even have an proper internet connection. I'm just running it off my iPhone at the moment. Um, so upload all those files, and once they've completed uploading, we can then start configuring WordPress. Right, so once that's finished uploading, that only took about 10 minutes via an iPhone connection through my crappy 3G. So, it won't take very long on a proper, broadband connection. Anyway, so once you've done that, the only file that really needs to be configured, because it's a self-installing application, or whatever you want to call it, is you'll have a file in here called wp slash, sorry, hyphen config hyphen sample. And what you do is you need to rename that, and you need to rename that to just wp config. So we do that, and it's just, you've got to have .php there. And then once that's renamed, open that up in an editor. So if you go open it up, I have this thing called Notepad++, which is way better than just Notepad. What you can do as part of FileZilla's configuration is tell it, which application you want to open any files with, and because I've got Notepad++, it'll automatically detect the language and then, color code based on the syntax of the language. So it's much easier to read. So you can see all my comments are in green, and my keywords are in blue, and all that sort of stuff. So a lot easier to be able to read the file. The key pieces of information here are the MySQL settings, right? And you need to get this from, it says, even if you can get this from your web host. So we just need to define a database name, and then a user who accesses the database, and then the password for it. It's always going to be localhost, unless the database is a separate server to your web server, which I can almost guarantee is not going to be the case if you're a basic user and you're watching this video. Anyway, so to configure that, I need to go to my control panel of my web host. So most of the time, you would have a called a C panel for, say, a Linux host. So I can bring mine up. I'll log into that. Once I've logged in, quite a nice C panel provided by Crucial Paradigm. And right, so what I need to do is I need to add, first of all, I need to add a database, right? Because I don't even have the database, right? So I can just go to this MySQL databases thing here. You can see I've got a number of databases that exist here. And what I want to do is I want to create a new one. And so they usually will prefix your database with the username that logs in. So you want to just call it, I'm just going to call this WordPress Copter. Right, I'm going to create that. Going to go away, create the database, and you want to make sure, obviously, that you've got a host that allows for the creation of MySQL database. So if you've got a free host, you want to be careful. You want to check, exactly what you're getting, because, some cases free hosts don't allow. Right, so once that's been uploaded, this config file here used to be renamed. Was originally WP config sample. This is the only piece of configuration you need to do in terms of the files on the WordPress website, in your WordPress directory. So what you do is you grab that file and you rename it to just be wp config. And what you do is you edit the file and you change some settings in here, and that'll tell it, where your database is and who can access it, and that sort of thing. So I've got this program. I'm running Windows, unfortunately, but if you are running Windows, then I recommend Notepad++. The cool thing about that is that I can configure my FTP client, in this case FileZilla, to open files with whatever program that I choose. And so I've got this application called Notepad++, which is free from the internet. You can just download it. Just Google Notepad and then plus plus, and you'll find it. What it does is it automatically reads the syntax of files and determines the language. So then it will color code it based on the language that it detects, which is awesome because it makes this a ton easier to read. You can see my comments are in green. This PHP syntax here is in red. My keywords are in blue. My variables are in grey, etc., etc. So that's just making it that much easier to read. What I need to do in this file here is I need to define the database name, which is a MySQL database sitting on my web server, which I haven't even created yet. And I need to define a user who will access the database, and then the password for that user. So those 3 pieces of information I've got to do now. So then what you would do is you would log into your cPanel, and I've got quite a nice cPanel here provided by my host Crucial Paradigm. What I do is I create my database. So I actually just did this before thinking I was recording, but I wasn't. But you would go into MySQL databases on the home page, and then you create a new database, and it's usually prefixed by the user. And I just created something called Wordpress copter, and then I went ahead and said press create. It went ahead and did that for me. Then what I do is I can add a user who's going to add that, who's going to be the user for my database. So this is not you accessing it. This is the user credentials that WordPress will programmatically use to access the database, which is to read, write, update, and delete data within the tables, and even create tables. So it allows that login to then go ahead and create all the MySQL WordPress database tables, which will then populate it with all the data that it needs for WordPress to run. So we're going to add a new user here to the MySQL database, and I'm just going to call that copter. Alright, then give it a password, and I'll give this a strong password. And then we want to add the user to the database that we've just created. And we want to make sure that it exists. So I'll go ahead and create a database called Wordpress copter. And I might just want to refresh this. And assign it to the right database. So create that user. Alright, create the user.